Good evening and welcome. I have to tell you, I am thrilled that there are some familiar faces from the other meeting, but at the same time, it's nice to see some new faces and get to connect with you. I am Dr. Mark Kleisner. I'm the Executive Director of the West40 ISC, and some of what we're going to do is overviews of what West40 does, and then some specifics about this building and our plans, and then a lot of time for questions and answers that I'm going to do my best to answer. If I can't get the answer, you'll go home with my business card and I'll find it for you. We are very, very excited about the plans here and how this is going to build and grow and transpire over the next year and a half or so, and then beyond. In a minute here, we'll share our mission statement. It's kind of washed out on the wall. We'll do our best to use the projection on the wall because it's a little washed out. Some of you that were here before, at our last meeting over in Hillside, you've heard the little bit that I'm going to give now. West40 is a government agency that serves as oversight to the 40 school districts in Western Cook County. So we oversee the schools from Cicero all the way out to 294, all the way up to O'Hare, and all the way down to Willow Springs. That's our trapezoid, that's our region. It's about 100,000 students, 152 school buildings, about 7,000 educators. And we do three main things. The first thing we do is that we work with our school districts on compliance. Now that's health, life, safety, the physical environment. I'm sorry guys, like this is the spot right here. Sorry about that.
That's right.
So we do health, life, safety, the physical environment. We do policies, procedures, licensure, those kinds of things. So that's the procedural compliance part. The second thing that we do is professional learning for teachers. And when we were growing up, we remember things like the Teacher Institute Day. And we knew that our teachers went someplace to do some learning. Well, we're part of that in West40. The third thing we do, I don't know what I'm doing. The third thing we do is we work with students who are labeled at risk. And there's a whole continuum about that. So many people have heard of truancy officers. I could use my teacher voice. Maybe I'll stand. It's really funny. It's situational. All right. So I will use my teacher voice instead.
Keep going.
All right. Thank you. So the third thing we do is we work with at-risk students. Many of you grew up hearing about truancy officers. You might have got that notion. But for us in West40, it's a much bigger picture. We actually work with over 3,000 students at different levels of need. And actually, one of our senior directors, or a couple of our senior directors are going to talk about our programming a little bit. The reason that's really important is that about the end of February, the governor came to us and said, we want a model program in Western Cook County that can help serve the needs, particularly of students who are in foster care. And so he came to us and said, we've heard the good things about what you do. Can you expand that to a residential setting? And then we started planning. So that's the basis, and Joe and Renee will talk about that in a little bit. But I wanted to start with a video, right? Yes. And this video talks about the story I just mentioned.
This is one of the state's great partners, educating kids, and also a state-of-the-art best practice treatment and services provided for youth, some of whom have behavioral health needs. We can't do the work that needs to be done in the state of Illinois without West 40 and organizations like it that help us deliver those services. So thank you for that and so much more.
When our youth feel heard, supported, and safe, there is absolutely no limit to their dream or potential. As we stand here today celebrating the announcement of this blueprint, I'm also proud to celebrate my friends here at West 40 who have taken significant steps in finding the ways to serve our youth.
Welcome to my grammar school. Yes, yes. Isn't this exciting? This is the place where that little girl who they're trying to help, this is where it all began for her.
So I mentioned that I would come back to our mission statement. What you see on the wall is our mission statement. And we believe right down in our soul that what we're about is meeting people where they are. Tonight we're talking particularly about children, but we also work with teachers and we work with adults and families. So we're all about meeting people where they are and then being what they need. This building and our project here wasn't even on our radar 2 years ago. But we realized that there's a need, and so we're going to show up, we're going to meet people where they are, we're going to be what they need. Beyond that, we're going to walk further with them and stand strong with them. We feel very, very strongly that we are not about compliance and standing still, we're about moving forward and making a difference. And tonight, we're going to talk about how excited we are to be part of Westchester, to really do a model program for the state of Illinois and eventually a model program for the whole United States. But it starts right here, and as part of that, we want to be really good community members here in the village of Westchester.
Hi, I'm Chris Coffey, and I'm on the West 40 communications team. We're beyond excited about what the future holds for St. Joseph High School here in Westchester. West 40 is a government entity that works as an intermediary between the state of Illinois and dozens of school districts in West Cook County, and we recently purchased St. Joseph High School. Our plan is to renovate the school and turn it into a state-of-the-art learning facility, and we want to be a good neighbor. So let's take a tour inside to see the school as it is now, and we can tell you what we envision for the future. St. Joseph is the ideal choice for West 40 to serve students, build strong community connections, and support the governor's commitment to providing education services to youth in need. We foresee about 40 students learning and living here at any given time, and we hope the school is up and running by March of 2024. Dr. Mark Kleisner is West 40's executive director.
The governor shared with the state his blueprint for transformation around mental health services, and he sees that as a collaboration of many state agencies, and we've come alongside and said we have the perfect location to provide a safe, respectful, state-of-the-art learning environment for students who have been marginalized for a lot of different reasons.
Keys to this plan include St. Joseph's abundance of classrooms, meeting spaces, a working kitchen, and living quarters. St. Joseph closed in 2021, and it remains mostly in good shape, but we are doing renovation work that includes asbestos abatement, roof repairs, and new windows. We also removed walls to create a larger space in the front of the school, while the refurbished library will receive new lights, new walls, a new floor, and new paint. In case you've been wondering what's happened inside the school since it closed 2 years ago, well, this is some of it. Lots of graffiti in the halls and here in the gymnasium. But don't worry, it will get fixed and we'll clean it up. Replacing all of the broken windows is also a top priority. Meanwhile, we've installed new exterior lights, and in the future there will be round-the-clock staff on site. On the north end of the property, the original St. Joseph has extensive damage, and we plan to replace it with green space, which could be used by the public and the park district.
So we imagine the space the huge outdoor space with walking paths, perhaps an outdoor theater, outdoor classrooms, but then internal space for production, coursework, being able to work well with the community. So within a year from now, will be something ready to give back to the community and to partner with our neighbors and those in the surrounding area.
The entire operation will be funded by the state of Illinois. Meanwhile, there's still a lot of work to do, and West 40 will keep you updated as we transform St. Joseph into a new state-of-the-art learning facility. Thank you.
So you kind of hear the core of our work with students. As I mentioned, currently that's about 3,000 students across the region. And it forms what we call a continuum of services. And we thought that it'd be nice tonight to share, two of our senior directors of student programs are here to talk about how we program for students across the whole region. And that's in the Westchester schools as well as schools throughout all of West 40. So I've asked Joe and Renee to share a little bit about our program. They have some handouts too if you want to learn more about that, but I'll turn it over to them to talk about our programs.
Can everybody hear me okay? I skipped using the microphone. Is this okay? Everybody? Try louder. Try the mic? Okay. Every word I'm going to say is extremely important. So if I cut out, if you miss one, I will feel like I haven't done the audio. So, my name is Joe Gage. I'm a director of student programs here at West 40. And what that means is that my role entails supporting the leadership of what we call our Continuum of Student Service programs. I have spent 20 years of my career in education. I served as a teacher, as an administrator in the traditional school system. I've also served as principal of our alternative school here at West 40, and now serve in this role as senior director. And over the course of my 20 years, I've never been in a more rewarding or fulfilling position or done more rewarding or fulfilling work than I've done here with West 40.
Can you hear me?
In addition to the 20 years I've spent in education, I've also been a proud resident of Westchester for the past 20 years. I'm raising my two daughters here. So the work that's being done here at St. Joe's and the work that we do in the community is very near and dear to my heart. And that extends beyond just my role here as senior director, but it's also as a parent and a community member here in the wonderful town of Westchester. So, as Mark mentioned, the work that we do entails supporting 38 school districts throughout West Cook County. And those 38 school districts refer students labeled or deemed as being at risk. Okay, so when we started this work over 20 years ago, the two-pronged question that we sought out to answer was this: what is the profile of an at-risk student, and how can we best support their needs? Okay, so now we fast forward to today, 20 plus years later, and we have found what we feel are answers to those questions. And the first thing we learned is that there is no single profile for an at-risk student. Okay, at-risk students come in every size, every type of background, every age, every grade level. The common denominator for our at-risk students is that they are in some way, shape, or form struggling to find success in their homeschool environment, which is what prompts a referral to one of our programs. Okay. Outside of that common denominator, there are a myriad of needs that students present. So at West 40, it's our responsibility to recognize what those needs are and build programming around those needs to ensure that those students can be reconnected to a successful school experience. That's our primary goal in the work that we do. The second part of the question, how can we best support our students, can be summed up and answered in the video that we're going to show now.
Gotcha. It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on, if you would just...
Don't.
Okay, so making light of some of the serious work that we do, oversimplified, but the idea is that West40 does not go into a school or work with students with a scripted formula, saying that we know what's best for every at-risk learner. What we've done best is we've asked questions of our schools, of our families, and of our students about the barriers that they feel are standing in their way from experiencing success, and we step back and we listen to what those needs are. And then collectively, as a team, we build programming around those needs to help remove the barriers that are standing in our at-risk learners' way. Right? Because when we started this, and what Mark shared is that every student deserves success. And we believe that every student is one caring adult away from success. So we believe that if we can intervene with our programming, that we can reclaim those students and reconnect them to a successful experience in school. So throughout the course of the years, in listening to the needs of our local districts throughout West40, we've developed what we call a continuum of programming. And our continuum of programming currently consists of 4 primary lanes of service to support students with needs from attendance all the way up to expulsion. Okay, so we have a truancy support team that is working with students and families whose barriers exist between the door of home and the door of school. Right? And our liaisons are going out, knocking on doors, meeting families where they are, meeting students where they are, trying to stabilize their attendance at school. Okay? Once we get students to school, we have 3 additional lanes of programming that are used to support students. Okay? And this is a handout that you can grab. If you haven't already on your way in, please grab one on your way out. I'm not going to get very granular and go into the details of our programs, but if you'd like to learn more about it, there's a QR code that will take you to our website, and you can learn a whole lot more about the different programs that we have to support students. But ultimately, our programs are split into what we call push-in programs and alternative placement programs. So on the deep end, we're serving students who unfortunately are eligible for expulsion or have experienced multiple suspensions in their home schools, and we have to support and serve them in our alternative school setting. Okay? That's not the most beneficial type of support or effective type of support because it's very reactive. We've waited for a student to fail, we've waited for them to become eligible for expulsion before we're serving them. Ideally, we want to start with early intervention and start supporting students as young as 4th grade. And we're doing that in our other lane of service that we call our push-in services, where we're serving students inside of their home schools. Okay? And collectively, across our student service continuum, we've successfully served over 2,800 students throughout the course of this school year. I'd like to show you a quick video that it highlights the work of one of our student advocates. And this is one of our push-in programs where West40 employs student advocates who go into schools to work with students who are struggling to find success. And I can tell you about these programs, and Dr. Kleisler can tell you about them. But when you hear students talk about the impact, that this work has on them, it resonates differently. So here's a quick look at one of our student advocates, Mr. Gonzalez, who's working in District 83 at Scott Elementary School in the Mannheim area.
I do, truly genuinely care for the students, and they come to see me as nothing but a safe space, a nurturing space, a place where we could talk while we play.
It helps my mental mind for me to be more, to try my best, and also for him to help other people, and also it's helping me a lot improve in school.
In the short time that we've had the program here, we can see great results because Tapestry meets students and families where they're at. We can only talk about the good things that Tapestry has brought to our community, to our school, to our students.
I got a caseload within the first couple of weeks, and it's been growing since, and the kids are the best part of the day. It's great, my role here as a student advocate, getting to talk to them and be just somebody they can lean on.
Sometimes you feel nervous telling your teacher, maybe you can come over here and tell him, and he can tell the teacher for you. And I feel like it's helpful for kids. It's fun. We learn stuff. We learn fun stuff. If we do good, he sometimes gives us a treat, and that's how I describe it to my friends. Mr. Gonzalez, he's really fun and good to talk to. Yeah, I do better in a lot of things.
We establish the relationships with the parents. We get to, we do home visits. We talk to them often, and the students have a safe place for us. It's more of a positive thing. When I call home, most of the time, overwhelmingly, it's a positive call. We're not here for discipline. We're here to build bonds with the school and the community.
When you have that person, that connection with the school, you're more likely to academically perform better. You're more likely to be engaged in school. You're more likely to not miss school. You're more likely to graduate from high school and go on.
I want to be an engineer, scientist, teacher, chef.
I tell them we're a family. I'm your brother, you're my sister, that type of thing, and we gotta keep our family together. And it helps them to see that we're all part of the big picture.
So again, that's a quick glimpse into some of the work that we're doing to support students who are struggling in our area districts. And I don't know, when you see those students, the term at risk sometimes makes us picture a student that can look pretty scary and sound pretty scary. But when you see these students, you recognize that they're just students who haven't developed certain skill sets and can benefit from additional support that our advocates and staff can provide them. And although every single one of our programs operates just a little bit differently, what's common amongst our programs is that we prioritize relationships and we operate on trust. So when you see our truancy liaisons going out to try to get students to school, they're not going around waving badges and issuing fines. They're building connections and learning about what our families need. When students are sent to our alternative school, they don't encounter metal detectors and armed guards. Okay? We operate on trust. And that recipe has proven very successful, which is why we stick with it. Even though we're serving all expulsion-eligible students in our Safe School program, we're proud to say that in over 20 years, we've not had a single fight in our alternative school building. And that's a statement that not many schools, alternative or traditional, can say. So we're very proud of that fact, and it's because of the intentional effort that we put in to getting to know our students and our families beyond their performance in the classroom. So we're very, very proud of that. Additionally, these are just a couple of numbers that I'd like to highlight for you. And this is very eye-opening for me. When I came to West40 and served as the principal of what we call our regional safe school, our staff consisted of 7 staff members, and we were serving about 50 students at that time. So to give you some perspective, that was in 2007. Okay, so today we're serving 62 schools, and our staff now consists of 123 team members in our student services program. So we've experienced tremendous growth. Our remote school, which is a virtual experience for students to engage in an online learning platform, has successfully served over 70 students this past year who were either identified as being medically or emotionally fragile. 385 students have received support, and we have been able to establish consistent attendance for 385 students who were identified as being truant, not showing up to school. Our ALOT program has helped 600 students successfully graduate, and please remember that 600 students that somebody in the field of education labeled as at risk. Said this student is likely to drop out or not finish their educational career on time with their other classmates. 600 of those students successfully graduated this school year. And then in total, as we mentioned, throughout our Continuum of Services, we've successfully served over 2,800 students in the West 40 area. Again, all in some way, shape, or form who've been identified as at risk. So now the work that we're excited about engaging in here at St. Joe's is going to allow us to add another layer of support to that continuum. So that when we identify student needs that right now land outside of our continuum of support, we'll have programming to meet those needs that the students that come into this environment present them. The very last stat, and it's the smallest number, it's the number 2, but it's a number that I'm very proud of. We have right now 2 alumni of our programs who were expelled from their home schools, labeled as at risk, labeled as potential dropouts, one of whom successfully graduated from St. Joe's, both of whom earned advanced degrees, master's degrees in social work, and are now serving as advocates using their skills to help support students who are currently at risk. So the reason that this work is so fulfilling is because it really is life-changing. You hear that all the time, but we're able to see the life-changing impact that our work has when we see that work come full circle. And we've got students now who are serving and giving back to other students who are in need. So that's a quick overview of our student service programs. I will be here. You can get mine or Renee's contact information on our website if you ever have questions or you're interested in learning more about any of the programming that we have here at West 40. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a little bit better of an understanding of the work that we do to currently support students.
I'll try the microphone dance too. We'll see if we can make that work. I think with the fan off, it's a little easier to hear anyway. So, I jinxed it. So, in our belief statement, we start with every student deserves. It isn't just like I'm going to show up and offer. Every student deserves. And right now, tonight, I want to talk about 40 students that are going to live in the dormitory right over there. Those students will come to us in similar ways from what Joe said, but in this case, these students will come to us by way of DCFS. They are students, I'm going to do a little asterisk here. As of today, this is the group we're told that they need us to serve. These are students in the foster care program that don't have a place to sleep. Tonight, there are 252 students who do not have a place to sleep in the foster system, for whatever the reason. In many cases, these students have been in multiple placements. They're growing a little bit older and harder to adopt or to foster. They haven't found their forever home yet. And because of that, they bring some baggage in their backpack. And I truly believe, whether that's the stars aligning or divine guidance, something, that those students came through the system and DCFS said, this is the type of program that you just heard about. These are people who believe in kids and who make a difference. And so we're excited to bring that work here. Now, with this idea that every student deserves, I will just tell you passionately, those 252 kids do not deserve to be sleeping on the floor, on a couch, somewhere else. They deserve to be in a place here where our teams are going to wrap them up in love, keep them safe, help change their trajectory and to move to their future. So that's the vision of this space. What's our next slide? Okay, before we go there, just hold there a second. A number of people have sent in questions. I won't read through all those. So there's FAQs up front. But before we see some glimpses of the interior of this building, there have been some common questions and some themes that came through. One is, who are the kids that are coming? These are, as I mentioned, these are foster care students through the DCFS program. Some of them are coming through the DHS program, but similar in notion, kids that don't have a home, they're foster kids, they need a place to live. Right now, we believe that they are going to be middle school students. There may be some high school, but it'll never be beyond 40 students because we happen to have 41 apartments right next door. So we're talking about 40 students with social emotional needs, kids that don't have another place, that actually need a good amount of mental health, social emotional support in helping them change their trajectory. So several people have asked, are these students who are coming out of the prison program? Are these students who have come with all kinds of arrest records, or are they dangerous? At this point, we don't have any indication that those are the students coming to Westchester. The only kids that we're talking about are kids that have social emotional needs, that don't have another place to live, and are in the foster care program. What we heard early on was that they're very similar to the students we serve in our Maywood alternative program. That program is a day school, kids go home at night, but they're students who've not made the best choices, they've gotten themselves in trouble, or as Joe mentioned, our remote students who have mental or physical, are mentally or physically fragile and just need something different. So those are the students that we're looking at serving here. There were a number of other questions like, how long will students stay? It's our preference, it's our design, it's our model that students would stay for at least a year. We find that in any of our other programs, we typically build 2-year relationships because it takes that long for someone who has been damaged, quite frankly, to begin to trust the adults and allow us to help them change their trajectory. So if you think about 40 students and they're staying here an average of a year, there's not a whole lot of turnover. This is not a revolving door. This is about building relationships. And to Renee and Joe's programs, we frequently hear parents or students say, can I stay longer? This works for me. A class size of 10 is better than being in a high school of 4,000. I would much rather have smaller ratios and more help. Our alternative school that Joe mentioned, it's physically set up with a classroom and then a social worker, and then a classroom and an interventionist. It's designed to have the supports the students need. That's what we see bringing here. So that was a common theme about what kinds of students are you talking about. Another common theme was about property value, taxes, funding for the program, that kind of general arena. And that came up at the last meeting too, so I'm glad people are asking. This is a great opportunity for me to help explain. When you get your next tax bill, you'll never see West 40 on your tax bill. This is not local taxes. So your local taxes go to your local school districts, 92.5 and Proviso. Our funding comes straight from Springfield. Our office does not have any ability to levy. We can't run referenda. None of that money is from the local area. As a government entity, we are funded in the same way as like the Secretary of State's office. Our money comes straight from the comptroller from Springfield. And in some ways that's calculated the same way as a local school district, but the money doesn't come from the local school district. One way to think of it is that our office is funded by the entire state of Illinois. So we're much more funded like Secretary of State's office, the state's attorney, the attorney general, any of those government entities and how they're funded. That's why you don't see West 40 on your tax rolls. So all of the money that's going to be put into this program will come from the state. Now there are two avenues. One is the physical construction. We are budgeting about $55 million for this site. Some of that's the building. Quite frankly, I'll get to this in a minute. Quite frankly, a bunch of that is going to take out the north buildings because they need to go. So I've got to do asbestos abatement, we've got to do demolition, that's got to go. So that's some of it. Some of it is heating and air conditioning. I'm sorry it's warm in here tonight, but we're putting in new heating, air conditioning, we're putting in internet and all kinds of safety measures. We'll do asbestos abatement, we'll do refurbishing. I will invite you back in October. I can't let you go into the main office now because it's just totally torn up. We've done demo in the main office, but come back. It's going to be beautiful. We're doing work in what was the library and what was the main office, and those are going to become the new office for the program and a community center where a couple of our teammates will be holding meetings with families and so forth. So that's the front part of the building. But that $55 million of construction, that budget comes straight from Springfield. Doesn't touch Westchester at all. So that's really important to know. The second part is the operations of the program. So once we've got a beautiful building, what do we do with that? And when those 40 students move in, I'm anticipating a staff of 40 to 50. So we'll be looking for people to work here in all kinds of capacities, but we'll be looking at about 40 to 50 staff members for a program of 40 students. And that'll get to another topic about safety. But what does it cost to run a program with 40 staff members 24/7, keeping kids safe, programming for children who have social emotional issues? What does that look like? Well, that programming is going to be conducted and funded through contracts with DCFS, DHS, the governor's office, and the State Board of Education. All of those people are part of this design. And so today, tomorrow, we're writing the design of what that program looks like. And we already have a preliminary approval of those programming contracts to run that program for those 40 students. It all kind of makes sense that if the state is helping provide the renovation of the building, they want to make this a place where they can use it through an operational budget. So we're very excited. We haven't started hiring the staff yet. We have a program director and a clerical person that are helping do all the paperwork that I'm talking about. But we're not planning to design or not hire the staff for the program for probably close to a year, which was another theme. When is this all going to happen? So we're starting the office for planning. We plan, those of you who've worked with state agencies, actually I'm talking about myself, so I have to be careful. You know where this is going, don't you? Things don't move as fast as Mark Kleisner wants them to move. So we keep using language that sounds like 12 to 18 months before we're fully operational. Kids are living there, ready to go. Some things will move quickly, and you'll see that. But in terms of the full build out and ready to use it, that's going to be somewhere between 12 and 18 months. So part of that theme was, what are you going to do about security? What does security look like? Some folks were concerned with the students that would be living here. I think I've sort of addressed that, but furthermore, the fact that we're going to have more adults on campus than kids is all about relationships. Joe mentioned that word 37 times, I think. We're all about love and relationships. When you can go almost 30 years without a single fight in an alternative school, that's a miracle. And that's because love comes first. We're going to show up and love them. So that program, that design helps with the safety. In addition to that, we have two safety experts. One of them is at the door over there, keeping us safe. Thanks, Will. In today's world, not just alternative schools, in every school, we see this stuff far too often on the news. And West40 has 2 experts that are focused on safety for all schools, but will also be part of our designing. And that's keeping people out and keeping those inside safe. So some of both of that. To the north buildings. Those buildings have been empty for over 15 years. There was no work. They are totally dilapidated. You almost have to cry if you look inside because some of that woodwork is just gorgeous. But they were allowed to disintegrate, and they just have to come down. There's no other option. And the way you do that is you take out any asbestos in the building. We've already had our asbestos experts look through it. So you keep that all contained so it's safe. You get rid of all the asbestos. If you see hazmat suits walking around, that's a really good thing because those folks are helping keep us safe, and then we'll take down the buildings. Our plan is to do that in the fall. There's some paperwork that has to be done with Cook County and actually through our office. We're working closely with our village officials as well. And so the plan will be to take them down in the fall. That also saves us some budget-wise because every school everywhere is doing work in the summer. So when the kids all go back to school, I'm sorry I'm crowding you, Joe. When the kids go back to school, some of those prices come down, which is nice, and I'm not gonna have the paperwork ready anyway, but that's coming down in the fall. Now, at the last meeting, several people asked about rodents. Anytime there's a demolition, don't the mice all scatter somewhere? And what are we gonna do about that? Some really good news. We had an exterminator come out a company come out last week, go through both the old St. Joe's school and the Brothers' home. And the report said, although there was evidence of previous habitation by animals, we saw no live animals in either facility, inside or outside. Right, exactly. So they signed off on this report that they had no evidence that there are current critters. Now, I think critters are smarter than people, and they probably found a place to go. But we have now contracted with the exterminator. As of yesterday and this morning, this building, both of these buildings and both of those buildings have now been set up with traps. So if we're taking that building down in the fall, we're going to have at least a couple months. And I mean, I think people who are nodding know I probably won't get every single one of them, but we're going to do the best we can in about 2 to 3 months to try to mitigate any of that impact, particularly outside of the campus, because I don't think if there were 1 or 2, they're not going to stick around while we're knocking down buildings. But we want to protect our neighbors, and we heard you loud and clear, so we've already moved ahead on those plans to try to offset some of those concerns. So moving forward, those are our updates. We've been working closely with the village folks. Greg has been terrific. The village president's been terrific. We've had several meetings, and we're having our lawyers talk to their lawyers about paperwork. We want to make sure that no one is misunderstanding, miscommunicating, or making assumptions. We want to make sure we're being really transparent and everybody knows what we're doing and how we're moving forward. So we're looking at opportunities to share with them. Our lawyers talking to theirs. I think they were even talking today to make sure that we're understanding that we're being transparent to the village and vice versa, so that we're working side by side. I think Joe mentioned it. He's a little biased because he's a resident, but it's a great town. I have to tell you, I was so thrilled. On the 4th of July, we marched in the parade. And we thought, that'd be kind of cool, right? So we got our van. If you haven't seen, we got a beautiful, colorful van, marched in the parade, and it just like warmed my heart. Folks are yelling, welcome to the neighborhood. And so people are starting to recognize West40. I showed you that list of questions in my pocket. People are knowing that they can call, they can email me. We're trying to get back as quickly as we can. Some of the people you see around the edge with the West40, we're all trying to work together right now to build the relationships with our community. As we move in October and beyond that, we look forward to those partnerships. Now, some of the things that were mentioned, I think in the video, we don't know how all that plays out. One of the questions in my pocket says, what are you gonna do with all that green space? And I'd just like to kind of go like programmatic philosophical with you for a minute. Kids who've been through trauma need places to decompress. It's one of the beautiful things about coming to Westchester. But on top of that, to have 10 or even 20 acres of open space where kids could walk. I've got some of my colleagues over here that are thinking therapy dogs, you know, it's that kind of idea. So how can we have outdoor classrooms or a walking trail or a place for kids to decompress? Several of the questions said, are you going to build something else on the property? Are you planning on more buildings? Are you going to have more kids? Are you going to have more programs? That answer is no. We plan to have this building up and running as a school for those 40 students and some additional services to support them. As you can imagine, students who come to us with that kind of backpack full of issues need some additional supports. We do not plan to build out. We plan to use this as green space. And I haven't made any plans or promises, but we have ideas of outdoor gardens and kids working with community members to garden vegetables or flowers or whatever that may be. A lot of those ideas have come forward. The other idea that has come forward is the idea of either solar or wind, that maybe we look at solar or wind energy, EV vehicles, perhaps. All of those are possibilities. And the teacher in me says, how awesome for our students who have been kicked to the curb are now part of state-of-the-art technology and learning about engineering and science and things like that. So I love those ideas. We haven't gotten that far. You know, right now the specific plans are the building that you are in. So that's a brief overview of the questions that were asked. I don't know if anybody on the team thinks I left something out on I'm getting some nods. I think we're good.
We're good, Martin. We can open it up for Q&A at the end after we show the materials.
Yep. So as you walked in, you saw a lot of plywood. Anywhere there's plywood, there's something broken behind it. And we were able to get a partial occupancy for tonight so you could see this. And we've taken pictures. The interiors are pictures around the building. So this is just like a minute or two, so you can get to see some of the other spaces that we're not able to get into tonight. And then we'll do Q&A.
So, and I know the view on here is really not clear because of the sun, but we could also email these out if you got an email from me, or you could sign your email. We'll make sure that we email these out to everyone. I don't know. Is it even?
It's worth doing.
Okay, yeah. That's the library. The cafeteria?
That's the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
Seats 305.
The auditorium.
It's the auditorium that seats 400. That's there are 4 corridors that have classrooms, total of 64 classrooms. This is a double-sized classroom that has a divider down the middle. Some of you may know the social studies wing. This is the art room. The artists on our staff are very excited about that potential. Is this the photography room? there was a photography classroom. This is the music room. You can see it's tiered where they used to practice being an orchestra. That is a look into the chapel. There's a chapel on the north end you can see, or on the south end at Cermak, you can see the rounded end. We're going to keep that chapel. It's beautiful, peaceful. We don't plan to change it. We're not sure how we're going to use it, but it's a wonderful space that we hope to find a good use. All the windows are intact. These are the old confessionals. I had a couple people ask if we were going to use that for the HR department. No disrespect intended. So, thank you for offering. Maria Elena would be glad to send those to you if you'd like to see them. One of the things that reminds me is you can see there are spaces that were intended for a large high school, and we see this as potential for our connections with the community. It's not hard to imagine evening basketball here for community members, the Park District or whatever that may be. We've had a couple brief conversations with folks like that, but you could imagine community theater in an auditorium like that. You could imagine space, the 305 next door, the cafeteria. There are a lot of possibilities, and we'll grow into that organically as time goes on. So thank you for showing those. With that, I'll open up to questions and answers. Yes, sir. You may, sure.
Nice presentation. How old is the West 40 program?
So we've been working with students for almost 30 years, the middle 90s.
All right, now, what are some of the metrics that you use in measuring success?
So primarily in our at-risk programs, we look at grades, attendance, and behavioral referrals. So if you were to spend time looking in our data system, you would see those three metrics tracked. And as Joe talked about, 600 students graduated this year. In addition to that, because our work by nature is social work, counseling kind of work, we also keep records of connections with families, case notes, things like that, to see how we can support students. So at the high school level, high school people love to talk about graduation rate. That's really important. It's often accepted as a metric for success. But we go all the way down to fourth grade. Some of the students you saw shooting basketball. But we look at those three metrics. When a student comes into our program, we always meet with the parents, we get consent with the parents, and then together we set goals. If that student, maybe that student has pretty good grades, but their attendance is not great at all, let's write some goals about that. About one, about two, about three of those areas, and we track those goals and meet regularly with parents to show progress toward those. In a general sense, my favorite metric when I talk at the state level is roughly 95% of the students who are at risk who come through our programs eventually graduate high school. And as Joe said, I love quoting him, it's like, somebody said that kid was at risk. In Illinois, that means I don't think they're going to graduate. So some educational professional said that kid's not going to graduate. 95% of that pool is coming out graduating. And to me, that's powerful. I think you used the word transformative or transformational. If we can change that kind of trajectory for a child or for a family, that's really our goal. So that's a longer answer than you might have wanted.
Okay, so that, if you were to put those metrics on a graph over 20 years, it sounds to me like you'd see a significant improvement in all those metrics over 20 years. Is that right? Or not?
So, yes and no. The improvement is the more students we're serving. It took a while to become successful, but I think that graph would kind of look like this, because we took a few years to get good at what we're doing, and we continue to do what we're doing, but with more kids. So that 95% might be the same 95% for 15 years, but it's a lot more kids. Next year, we're opening four new programs next year. This morning, Joe and Renee talked to some people from East St. Louis. They said, we want to pick up on what you're doing. Tomorrow, 3 of us are going out to LaSalle County because they want to replicate what we're doing. So I think that graph would look like this, sir. Like we got good at what we were doing, and we've stayed doing pretty well just with a lot more kids.
So you hit a plateau, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Diminishing returns?
I don't know that I would say that. We've plateaued at a level of excellence.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Great questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the graduation and that, and the sciences and that.
Mm-hmm.
So will they be pushing towards being a STEM school? You know, helping the kids with STEM programs. And I think what also I think is very important is a lot of these high schools, they're not doing this as much as they did years ago, but preparing the kids for trades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody that's in the trades knows that it's diminishing as far as qualified people. So, I mean, not everybody can go to college.
Yep.
So probably a lot of the kids maybe, or some of the kids coming in here, the trade option would be better informed. Is that something that's an option that West40 pushes for also?
Yep. This is where I like to say, I didn't even pay him. That was a perfect question. Sir, thank you for bringing that up. Both. So I want to address two.
Can you sum up the question for Zoom?
Yes. So my friends on Zoom, the question was that I had mentioned things like solar or electric or energy and science. Are we looking at STEM work? And the second part of the question is, not every kid is wired to go to college. What are we thinking about the trades? So STEM is near and dear. It's not just, it's not just glitzy. It's almost survival now, and so it's near and dear to my heart as well. But because I like to tinker with that kind of stuff. But we don't think that students can be prepared for success in life without some degree of STEM. It is just the world that we live in. Sometimes I tease, like, my dad just bought a new car, and it was like a 3-month learning curve because it's got 27 computers in it. What is that like? That even the basics in life are now somehow tied to science, to energy, to electronics, to engineering. So it will definitely be part of what we're doing. And kind of the setup that I was teasing you about, Illinois has something called the Learning Technology Hubs, or Learning Technology Centers. The LTC Center is funded out of Springfield, out of ISB, and a number of years ago, this gentleman and I, we tried to build training sessions for teachers and students around STEM, and actually Apple partnered with us at West40 to bring some of that to West40. Because of those connections, the LTC has asked if they could have a classroom here where they could do work with students. In particular, they work on drones. What's Eric do? Drones and robotics. And they would love to take that to students, but also to teachers. He said, is there any way we could have one of your classrooms where we could be a STEM center as for the region as well as for the students who would be attending here? The second question about not every kid's wired to go to college, what does the trades look like? We just started a program this year where at that alternative school in Maywood, we have a group of students that went to Triton every Friday and learned how to weld. So as they were graduating from their program in Maywood, they also had certificates as certified welders ready to go out into the work world. It's the first time we've done that. We've explored it and learned about it, but actually had a certificate. And it was so successful that we're excited about other opportunities. Pardon me? Absolutely, and it's certainly a livable wage coming right out of high school. We've worked closely with both Morton College and with Triton, a little bit with COD, just a little corner, but STEM and trades will definitely be part of what we do in West 40 in general, and to some extent here at St. Joe's. Yeah.
The 40 kids that are going to be living in what's now Convent or was Convent, are they the only kids that are going to be attending classes here, or will all the kids be brought in as day students?
So the question was, are the 40 students that would be living in the dormitory, are they the only students on campus, or will we also have a day school component? At this point, the only plan is for those 40 students. Now, the services, I believe, will stretch a little bit more. For instance, we know that a number of our students will walk in with social, emotional, mental health kinds of issues. We've already started to build the relationship with Lurie's Children's Hospital and be able to provide some additional social work, psychologists, psychiatrists kind of support. If that's here, it could very well be that they would also go visit Westchester. The professionals would go visit Westchester, Proviso, Berkeley. So I think we could be a service hub, but this will never be a place. Somebody asked me about what are the buses going to be like? Well, with 40 students living here, there's no bus. And so we are not planning a day school kind of program. The special ed co-ops have reached out to us to ask kind of what the plan is and wonder if any of our kids are going to need services from them. So there's a little bit of that conversation, but we anticipate 40 students and no buses because they would be living here full time, and no other students coming in on a day system.
I have a question. You had commented before about the plans, and you said asterisk that at this time, and then you said they're telling us at this time we're going to have 40 middle schoolers. Who is they?
This is a great question. Thank you for asking that. The question was, earlier I mentioned they are telling us which students are coming, and I said an asterisk in the plans. We're working very closely with DCFS, and frankly, we started there because we knew about the issues that DCFS has. We know that there are kids in need. We know it's a system that's not very successful. And so we started with DCFS and said, how can we help? So they in this case is DCFS. There's a woman, Dr. Weiner. If you see that video, Dr. Dana Weiner, she was the executive director of DHS, and now she's working in the governor's office working on mental health for children. She's the one driving the whole mechanism. And we're working also with ISB, and we're working with DHS, but DCFS will assign us the kids. And another question that's come up that's akin to that is, where do those kids come from? They could come from anywhere in Illinois. If they're in DCFS care and they're struggling, they could come here to find a safe place. DCFS will identify which kids are coming and when they're coming, and then they will come to us as a contracted program provider, and we'll provide the services for the kids. So that's who the they are. I don't know, 6 weeks ago, I wasn't sure. I had kind of an age band, middle school, maybe 9th grade, but we weren't getting a whole lot of information about which kids we were going to serve. And then we just had a meeting this last week, and we've nailed it down to 6th to 9th graders. Likely, they're mostly going to be boys. It's just statistically, there just happens to be. And it'll be students that have some sort of mental health, social emotional challenge where they need some additional help. So that's who the they is. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the chapel is going to stay. Do you have any plans for religious schooling or training with the kids? No specific plans. The chapel will stay. I think I would phrase that as the leader, I'm open. I had a couple questions that said, is there any chance to partner with faith-based organizations? I'm open to those discussions. The fact that we are a government entity that's funded by public dollars, I can't program that myself, but not unlike the Cub Scouts or Park District, there could be a group that perhaps offered something faith-based
that students could elect to participate in, but it will not be part of our programming simply because we're funded by state funds. But great question. Yes, sir.
I got too many questions, would take up, we'll be here till 10, but I'll stick with this one.
Okay.
I live right behind your new dorm over there.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I'm against this whole thing. It's just going to be increased traffic, truck traffic, and I know bus traffic will be coming. I know all cars, 3 shifts. It's going to be a mess. And then if you're talking about building out the left over there, you're going to have and putting concerts and this and that. It's going to be a lot of people eventually. Maybe not 2 years, but down the road. Who is going to be watching these kids overnight? How many people are going to be? We got 40 kids here. I don't know what the oldest is going to be. I don't know what the youngest is be. But that's a lot of kids to, is there going to be like 10 people here, 15 people here, one person? Because like I said, it's right behind those, and it worries me.
Yeah, so let me know if I recap correctly. His question was who's going to be monitoring the students on a 24/7 basis? And he shared a number of concerns about...
Basically just overnight. I want to know who's going to be here overnight.
So we actually partner with 2 other 24/7 residential school settings, and we have 24/7 staffing all night long. There will be folks that live on each floor. So in colleges, they often call them RAs. So there's somebody living on that floor with those students, and there are 3 full shifts. So at any given time, it would be like an 11 to 7, a 7 to 3, and 3 to 11, 3 shifts all night long. So in addition to that, we also will have, the front door is going to have cameras and buzzers and so forth, both to keep kids safe inside and to keep others out. But those will be staffed all night long, 365 all year long. And
You're still not telling me how many people are going to be here.
Yeah, you want to know how many will be here overnight.
Pardon me?
They can, you know how sneaky kids are. I'm just, to me, it just seems like a recipe for disaster.
Well, and I would love to, you mentioned you have a lot of questions, and we can set up a time to meet. I know that it's not a recipe for disaster, and I know that...
This is something new. Do you have any other facilities where they're sleeping overnight?
West40 does not, but I have two other facilities I work with that are 24/7, 40.
40 in each one of them?
There's 40 in the one in Chicago, and there's one in Glen Ellen that currently has 15. And those are blind, deaf students.
Yeah, because this seems like a whole new setup here. A lot more entrances, exits.
And I don't believe it'll comfort your concerns, but this is not new to the state. It's new to West40 because it's the first one we've been able to build. But we have been visiting other programs similar all over the state. There's a program in Aurora, the Illinois Math and Science Academy, where a couple hundred students live 24/7.
Residential neighborhoods?
Yes. Yep. And the one in Chicago is also in a residential area. This is something that's done in many places. We just intend to do it much better. And I can tell you there will not be buses and there won't be truck traffic. There'll be some deliveries because we're going to do food preparation and things here. So I'll be honest that there's going to be some of that, but it will be nowhere near what it was like when this was a full-blown high school. We're talking about 2 high schools. Yeah, thank you. 2 high schools. Yep. And I would love, my business card has my cell phone number. That'd be great. Yep. Hi.
Is there going to be curfew time when they come and go, or it's just they're going to be just living and going as they want to?
So the question is about structure of programs. I have 2 answers for that. They will never be going freely wherever they're going. I know that the students that are coming to us. We've worked with them in other settings. They are kids that thrive on structure. They thrive on relationships, on love. Joe used the word trust and respect. So they'll have very structured times. In the convent, perhaps in October, if we can get in there, you can see there are a couple large rooms where we could imagine them doing homework, those kinds of things. There's a large space that we'll use as the eating space. They will have their own set of classrooms, but with 40 students, I'm not imagining more than 6 classrooms that are pretty contained. What we do in our other programs is the adults walk with them. That's part of the building the relationships. We don't tend to use bells, those kinds of things. You know, have you ever been sitting somewhere and the bell goes off and you jump? Well, if you're a kid who's got a lot of baggage, that strikes you even more. So we tend to have a lot of structure, but that structure is surrounded by support and love, and we're right beside them all the time. One story I would tell in our current program, when I first came to West40, I asked about these questions about structure, about safety, and they said, we don't use guards, metal detectors, wands. We use eye contact and a handshake. And we know our kids so well that if they're having a rough morning, we say, hey, let's go have a granola bar and an orange juice and have a talk. Those folks are social workers who then have space where they can take kids and be with them, help them decompress whatever they brought to school, help them to start their day off a little bit better. So we're more about being, and I think you use that word too, proactive and preventative. If we can start right from the beginning and change how that day is going, and not about sit down, you need to do, you need to go, you need to be. But when you come visit, what you'll see is a great deal of structure and support, and as many adults as there are kids. So you're going to see that ratio is really pretty tight. Yes, sir.
I want to say, I think you guys know what you're doing, and it sounds like you got a great plan. And
thank you.
You're adding a lot of value to our neighborhood, and I appreciate that. But I am concerned with some of the natural resources that are here, some of the trees and baseball fields and things like that. And what are your plans, perhaps?
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up. The question was about what are our plans for the green space? And I want to say, if you get a chance to look at these, this is just a rendering. This is not a plan at all. But these are the buildings that have to come down on the north end. So it's the original St. Joe's and the brothers' dwelling. Those have to come down for safety. And what we're envisioning is additional green space. Now, I'll tell you, 2 different groups of people have come to me. Some have said it should be very restorative. It should be very calming. It should be a Japanese tea garden. It should have a pond with koi swimming in the pond. That's a problem because I have a couple fishermen on my staff. But another group that has said this is a great learning opportunity. How much of this can we keep natural, like prairie, so that our kids can learn about Illinois prairie? I will admit I'm not an expert. I know that kids need space. They need space to decompress. They need space to play. They need space to, hear the birds. I think that's very, very calming to students who are carrying along some tough emotional baggage. So my thinking is, I've been told that the village has a couple of different green groups that might be interested in talking with us. We also have heard that there are some folks that would love to teach kids how to garden. Maybe they could grow some of their own produce. That's another idea. But I'm going to be reaching out to experts in the area who know more about that than I do. I know kids and I know school, but the fact that we have about 20 acres to work with gives us some flexibility to think about different options that are best for kids. And at the same time, our kids are not going to be out there 24/7. That's going to be a very structured thing. But so many people have said, aren't there opportunities here? If you had a walking path, wouldn't that be great for the community? Just north of us is also the intermediate school. Westchester Intermediate School is just north. Is there a chance to partner there? All of that's up in the air. Right now, I know I have to take down those buildings, I have to clear that out. We have no intention of building hard structure. It'll be some version of green space. Yes, sir. I'll come right to you next.
Just going to piggyback off that, but go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Are the students allowed to leave the campus? And if so, will they have a radius?
So the question is, are students allowed to leave campus? They will never leave campus on their own. The only way they would leave campus, some of our staff have talked about programming and field trips. You know, could we go to the Field Museum for a day or something like that? You know, that we would probably love to incorporate experiences, but they would be, you know, shrouded in responsible adults who took them on a trip. They will not be allowed to leave our campus. Yes, sir.
Just piggybacking on the green space, and you and I can connect later. Historically, the culvert, or whatever you want to call it, that's behind that building, wasn't there, and there were a number of flooding issues. So we want to just be mindful in the demolition that we aren't creating backyard flooding for neighbors. But I'm happy to connect.
Yep, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you a big thanks to West40. I am forensic child death investigator, a former forensic child death investigator. And so I've been appointed to the Illinois Child Death Review Team by the governor. So just today, I was on our monthly meeting, and to hear, and over the years that I've worked in my career, I retired from Cook County Medical Examiner's Office a little over 2 years ago. But over the course of the years, and even today, just to listen to DCFS caseworkers and investigators, which we really do have some great DCFS investigators and caseworkers, to hear the frustration just from one today, just being totally overwhelmed and discussing a case that I really can't go into liberty about.
Yep.
But this team comes together and it's a multidisciplinary team. And we hear the cases that are presented before us, and then we make recommendations in hopes that this death will be, can be prevented. But here, back to the DCFS investigating caseworkers that's always so overwhelmed in this one particular case that we had to make recommendations today for. There's the thought from the whole team that had the DCFS investigator had somewhere to place this child, that she probably would have still been alive. But there's, it's limited. So what you propose, what you're going to do is very encouraging, working in this field and just thinking that we can actually, like someone said earlier, transform, transformation, save a child's life, just by them having a safe place, and then starting, at 9 or 10 years old and not waiting till they're a teenager, where it's just even more challenging to really, help change their behavior. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I will admit to you that this dream, I bet you know the name A.J. Frem from Crystal Lake. This dream started at his funeral. Like, something has got to be done. And if we could provide a place before, so thank you for that. And we need to stay in touch. Thank you very much for that. Yes, sir.
I didn't hear anything about effect on real estate values.
So the question is, will this project affect real estate values? Again, there's a couple answers to that. The first answer is that we're a government entity, just as St. Joe's was, so we don't pay real estate taxes. At the same time, we do not have any levying power or referenda power on the village. So nothing we do here is going to cost you anything.
No, this was not a tax question. It was what effect does it have on real estate values?
So I don't know how to predict the real estate values. I have to imagine that getting rid of this kind of environment, getting rid of a dangerous building where people and squatters are starting fires, I have to imagine that beautification, upgrading $55 million into a facility has got to be good for the community. I can't promise that your home value is going to skyrocket because of the wonderful program we're going to have, but I do know that we'll be value add to the community.
I know, but based on the experience that West40 has had, prior to this, with other locations, what effect has it had on real estate values in those areas?
So, yeah, so I don't have metrics about that yet. The Maywood site, we just bought a year and a half ago, and so we have been remodeling that. We put about $12 million into the Maywood site. In talking to Mayor Booker in Maywood, there are a number of tear down and rebuilds in the neighborhood. I don't know that that's our doing, but the neighborhood is very much alive, and we're connecting with our neighborhoods. Again, I can't promise, and I don't have experience to say. I do believe wholeheartedly that we will be value add just by virtue of the fact we want to make this a new and bright place. Yes, sir.
You keep talking about only 40 students. Is it going to increase? I mean, this is a lot of property, a lot of buildings. It's just going to stay at 40?
It is. So the question is, I keep talking about 40 students. Is it only going to stay at 40 students? The reason for 40 is because there are 41 apartments. And when we first started the dream was that we would have individual apartments for kids that had no place else to live.
But you just look at the math, okay, of how many schools there is, how many, students that need help, okay? Make a long story short. And you have the space, and the state's going to say, that property in Westchester, they've got a lot of space. We could build another building easily. There'd be plenty of room.
Well, there's a lot of wisdom in your thinking, except the state is funding all this, but they're funding it through us. This is going to be a West40 property. And so
You said that the state could come in and demand certain things of you. I heard that in your earlier.
demand things of me like what?
That they could come in and say, we want to hold something here, we want to do something here, we want to create something here.
Partnership.
Don't they have that, any type of control over you? If I'm giving you $50 million, I want a little say-so,
So
they come in and say, hey, we got too many kids, we don't know what to do with them, we need you guys to accept more. I mean,
they can ask, but it's our facility. The state will not own it,
Building, because there's room.
but they don't own the land to build that.
I'm sorry, what?
They don't own the land to build it. They could request, but that's never been part of our plan. As we've talked to the village, that's never been part of our plan. They have asked, if we build this program, could we replicate it again somewhere else? And we would be inclined to do that. I hope this doesn't sound derogatory in any way, but I don't want 500 kids who are really challenged here because I overload Westchester, I overload the high schools, I overload. 40 is doable, and 40 we can help and love and cherish and change their plan.
Just doing the math, you see how many kids need it. Okay, why wouldn't the state or other say, hey, look at this property in Westchester, it's got a lot of property, only 40 kids are there, we need a lot more.
I hear your logic, but I can tell you as long as I'm here, it won't happen, because the way this system is designed, and yes, the state's going to give us $50 million, 55, and they have capital grants that they have committed to us, and the purpose of that is to create a model program. So they've never said, they don't leverage power over us in any of our programmings. They are going to contract with us to provide the services, but they don't have the power to come in and say, you need to build another building. And you're right, there are a lot more kids than my 40 that I'm going to have here, a lot more kids. And if that's the case, we will take what we learn here and we'll build something else in Bellwood or in Des Plaines, or we'll find another place to replicate.
We have 29 acres.
I was just pulling names out of my hat.
No strings attached?
The string, yes, there is. The string is that I continue to contract with them for a 5-year period. So as long as I provide, they call it a burn down contract. So we develop the programs. They don't want to own property. They don't want to run programs. They want us to do it. And so they have what they call capital grants that are just for building, and they've committed that money to us. And the string that's attached is that I continue to program for 5 years. If for some reason I chose not to, I would have to pay back that percentage of the capital grant that they had provided.
So at a certain rate?
At a certain rate. No, I'm not paying it back.
No. You have to contract with them at a certain rate each year over the 5 years?
A rate of what? I don't.
Building or contracting, wherever it is.
No. When I'm awarded the grant for $55 million, they then say, contract with me for 5 more years and you're debt free. If in fact I only contract for 4 years, I have to pay 20% of it back.
I mean, you have, here's what I'm saying. You have to involve yourself with a certain amount of money on the contracts?
No.
No, okay.
Right. It's a little bit, there's a bit of it that almost feels too good to be true, but it is true because DCFS does not want to own property. DCFS does not want to run programs. They want to contract with people who do that really well. And the fact that there are several entities that want to work with us because of our track record opens the door to the funding that'll remodel this building, and we will fund the construction and be reimbursed by those capital grants. And then once we've serviced for 5 years, then there's no more obligation on that. Now, we intend to be here for a lot longer than 5 years. We know that exists. I do hope that this gentleman's concern comes true, and just like going to LaSalle tomorrow or St. Louis today, that other communities say, that's amazing, teach us how you did it, and show them how they can replicate it someplace else. This, when the Speaker of the House, when Kim Lightford and the governor were speaking, during that press conference, they said this program is going to be the model for Illinois, and that's going to be the model for the country. That's where our heartbeat is. There are so many kids that need our love and our help. We're going to do that. We're going to do it well here. Gia.
I know you keep mentioning and assuring that there's not going to be more than 40 kids here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any type of maybe contract that you could have that states that it will not go over 40? Because I know that that's a very common concern of a major part of this village.
So Gia's question was, is there something, can we have a contract or something on paper that only says 40 kids? And the answer is, that's about 6 weeks away. Because remember when I said there's $55 million in building, and then we write a program, and the program contract is for a certain amount of service. That's going to say 40 kids. And that will be a public document as a government entity. It will say to serve 40 kids in the dormitory in Westchester. So that will be the plan, and that's the only plan that they're going to fund. That's the only plan I want to execute. So yes, in about 6 weeks, that contract will be in hand. I'm going to jump back here and I'll come right back. Sure. Yes, sir.
My question is, for the future, you have 40 students here now. What are the future plans? Do you plan to add more students later or what?
Yep. So the question was that we want to start with 40 students. What's the plan for the future? And the best answer for that is there's some sort of rotation. It is our design to have a student for a year. If that student then is ready to move on and move out and be supported in a public school, or they're adopted, or they find their forever home, that opens one of those apartments, and DCFS will assign us another student. So there'll always be 40 on a rotating basis. As students become successful and independent, and as they can move on, then DCFS has hundreds of kids that are waiting for this kind of placement, so they will then fill that open slot. There'll always be 40. Yep. Yes.
So the 5-year grant, you continue on with the program. The grant for the building is complete, but you also mentioned your state funded. So after that 5 years, the state is going to continue to fund you as they do now to keep the program running?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, so the question is, how do the operational costs continue? And this gets to the question a minute ago. The way that works is that we design a contract that says 40 kids. So over here, I've got my team that's building the building, and over here, I've got the team that's building the program. And so what does that program look like? Are we gonna have music? Are we gonna have art? What does the program look like? And that contract is separate from the building contract.
With the state.
Correct. And then that keeps going on. That will be directly with DCFS to provide service for their kids.
Mark, we have a question online.
Yeah, there's a question that says, where are the children living currently who might be here?
The online question was, where are those children now? I almost have to pass out Kleenex at this point because it's not a good story. If you really get to the nitty-gritty of where those kids are, 252 kids tonight do not have a bed. Some of those are in hospitals, not because they have something wrong, but there's an empty bed and they can put their head on a pillow. There are kids that are living, sleeping under desks. They're sleeping on couches in offices. They're in police stations. They're in juvenile detention centers because there's no place else for them to put their heads. And the number that was given to me is 252 today in that setting. Now there are others, it may be tomorrow that we hear about a student who is not successful in a foster setting, and the foster parents say, we can't manage this child, he needs to go someplace else. Now it's 253. And when we started these conversations, all of the agencies said, we need residential. We need a place where kids can be safe and stay and call their own for a length of time while they get their feet on the ground. And because there aren't those settings, there are kids in all these bizarre, crazy places just because somebody found a pillow for them. And that's hospitals, that's incarceration, that's on the floor, on the couch. That's where they are today. And that's what motivates us each day to make another step forward with this program. Yes, sir.
Could you describe to us what one of the apartments looks like?
Yep.
Is there a washroom? Is there a sink?
Yep. So the apartments, the question was, what do the apartments look like? And they're pretty modest. I mean, they were designed for nuns. They're not very large. They each have a sink and a closet of their own. The restrooms are much more like dorms down the hall. There are showers and bathrooms down the hall. It also, for our type of programming, makes the space very safe. It's not a very complicated space. So they'll have their own bed, they'll have their own dresser, they'll have their own sink, a very, very small closet. But the rooms are probably 10 by 14. About 10 by 14. So not very large, but if you're laying on a floor in a lawyer's office, that's okay. And so everything will be new air conditioning, new heat, new paint. And we have some people on staff that are like, yeah, well, I'm gonna pick out the flannel pillowcases so that they can have something to put their head on. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's gonna be inviting and welcoming and safe, but small. Yes?
I'm concerned.
Okay.
Rehabilitating a child in 1 year's time is going to be very difficult.
Yep.
Okay? And it's like releasing them out to the world at that point. Why are you only choosing to do it a year?
Why what?
Why are you only choosing to keep the student a year? I mean, like me, I just started a new job. It took me a year to learn the job. And I'm not, hopefully not troubled, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so that's a short period of time to try to rehabilitate a child.
So if I can be a little editorial, I think you're exactly right. The question was, is a year long enough to rehabilitate a child? And if Joe were to talk again, I mentioned earlier that when we take a student in, we do an evaluation. And I think Lori's is going to be part of that. We'll set goals. We'll set benchmarks, we'll look at progress. I anticipate that there will be learning needs as well as emotional needs, and we're going to wrap all around them. And a couple minutes ago, I used the term independent. When we find our students making better choices and becoming more independent, we gradually introduce them back to their home school. Now, all of those advocates that Joe talked about that are embedded in the home school, if this young man is ready to go back to his home school, we're going to attach him to a social worker that's his buddy to help him be successful at school. Now, it may be that he goes 1 hour a day or 1 day a week, and we help transition that back. As a student, we do that carefully and slowly so that if it's not the right thing, well, let's wait another month. That's the way West 40 is wired to work. In many programs, we feel like they move too fast. There's almost a revolving door, like place them, go on to the next one. And that's just not the way we operate. One of our team members had actually talked about, could we get them as freshmen and keep them for 4 years and really make a change in a high school student over 4 years? We tend to like working with younger children before, if there's a chance to change student, the younger you can work with them, the better, and give them hope. So it may be, I could imagine some student that somehow they've got their act together and they just needed an adult to believe in them, and they're with us for 2 months. I don't think that's very likely, and it's not going to happen very often. So our program is talking about a minimum of a year. In the programs that Joe described, we frequently have students for 2 years, sometimes 3 or even 4 years, where students and parents elect to have their students stay in that kind of programming. That's the kind of mindset we use, and that's the argument we'll bring to the DCFS folks when we write those proposals and contracts that I was talking about. It's all about relationships, and we know relationships don't come quickly. There have been numbers of students that we've worked with where the student may be, they may not even talk to us for the first 2 months. We're just becoming the safe place. And then after a couple months, they start to open up. And that depends on their story, that depends on their history, their damage, their, the baggage that they bring with them. So I think you and I are resonating exactly on the same place. We're going to do whatever it takes, as long as it takes, for students to be successful. And that's what they know about, that's what DCFS knows about us. That's where our heartbeat is. Yes?
Do you plan on ramping up the school like they did at Design Academy with, say, 10 students, like 20 students, like 30 students, or are you going to dump everybody?
That's a great question. The question is, how, as you enroll students, are you going to ramp them up slowly, or are 40 going to show up on one day? It has always been our practice to do this slowly. At our regional safe school in Maywood, we're about to start the year with about 20 students, and those are returning. By the end of the year, we'll be at 60 students. But that's about 1 student at a time, 1 student a week. That would be our proposal, because we know that each time you add a new ingredient, things, the dynamics have to sort themselves out. And that's what we see to be the reality of working with young people. So it would be our likelihood to ramp up much more slowly and make sure that as we go, we start with a handful, maybe 4, 5, and then slowly let those dynamics, as each new one joins, reestablish the equilibrium and move on from there. Yes?
Just when you talk about a year and slowly introducing the students into their home school, if these kids are coming from an environment where they're sleeping on a couch in a lawyer's office, and you're in 1 year and they're ready, or 6 months or whatever, to be reintroduced to the regular school, if they didn't have a home before they came to you, where are they going to go when they go to the regular school? I mean, you're releasing them not only from your education program, but you're releasing them from your residential program to live where?
So that's a great question. The question is about this gradual release system that I was describing. In my mind, It could be that you've got a 6th grade boy who's showing signs of independence. We are in every high school in the region and in most of the middle schools. So I don't imagine 40 middle schoolers from here going to Westchester Middle School. I would imagine one might go to Hillside, one might go to Berkeley, one might go to Westchester, but still living here. We would transport them to that public school, help them be successful there. DCFS hasn't been clear about how they're going to find the next step. How do we help kids find their forever home or be adopted, or what that next step looks like? What we're really focused on is what we can offer for the time that they're with us. And the fact that we're in so many different schools means that our kids can carefully, quietly integrate in any one of those schools where we already have programs to support them. But they would continue to stay here. Yes, ma'am.
Do you operate year-round, or do they go back to their homes or whatever to a dangerous situation during the summer?
Yep. So the question is, do we work year-round? In any of the programs Joe mentioned, we are 24/7, 365. We're all year round. Those advocates, even if students are in their gen ed school, the advocates are accessible anytime over Christmas break, all summer. This facility will be 365. It'll be all year round. Yes, sir.
Doctor, the program sounds very promising, but an impression I got from what you said is that it's not going to impact our property taxes, okay? And that's fine, all right? But I suspect, in view of the fact that the state's paying for this, the state gets its revenue from the tax-paying citizens, I suspect that maybe somewhere along the line, it may impact on our income taxes that we pay. What are your thoughts on that?
On income taxes?
Yeah.
Well,
no, I'm not talking about
yeah, so
I'm talking about the income taxes you pay.
I understand.
Are likely to go up.
So my thinking there is the $55 million I talked about is in existing capital grants. DCFS has budgets for their contracts. The money for this program already exists in their budgets. So they don't have to get additional dollars from sales tax, from income tax, from property. That's already woven into their budgets. It's just now funneling to us to provide services. So it's not new money, it's existing money that'll be new to us. Yes, sir.
You said that after the child comes in here, and hopefully about a year, he's able to go to a regular school, then like Westchester Middle School, and still live here. What kind of rate do you have that maybe they get in trouble in Westchester Middle School? Do they come back here? What if the positions are even filled, and then they go back into DCFS? What happens in that case?
This is a great question. So it's realizing that every student has two caps. One is their residence and the other is their education. So every student will start living here and going to school here. As they become independent to go to a regular school, they'll still be living here, at least for the interim, while they're becoming more successful. So then the question was, what if they end up in trouble in their home school and need to come back? Well, the bed will still be here. You know, it's going to be a very gradual release before students are released. And wherever that is, it's my hope that the majority of those are going to a forever home where somebody adopts them and says, that kid can come to live with me. Then it's their home school, their situation. But there are two different components. One is being successful living here. The other is where are they most successful as a student? Yes, sir.
Okay, well, so then let's just say we get some kids, maybe out of the 4, we get 5 kids, that a couple in the proviso and middle school. That in turn is going to raise our taxes because somebody has to pay for those kids to go to these middle school and high school. Isn't that, I mean, it's all on head count.
So it's a,
Technically, our taxes could go up.
so that won't happen because two things. We are a public school. We're a government entity. We're a public school. We are on the records as a public school. And because we oversee all of the schools in West 40, really all of the students in West 40 are our students. We would not have to pay tuition from here to one of the West 40 schools. They're already students that are in a West 40 program who would then be served in a West 40 school. So it will not affect your taxes. There's no...
I'm talking about the middle school. You said they're going to transition to a middle school. It'll be a public school.
And this is also a public school. It's one public school to another.
But you just said there's two separate entities. The public school, our kids would be raised, and this is not part of the public school system.
So what you're describing to me sounds like if your student went from the middle school to Proviso, all of a sudden your taxes would go up because they went to Proviso.
I thought you said that kids are going to transition out of here, but stay live here and go to a regular school. I don't consider this a regular school.
So, but I think the analogy still works. They're going from Westchester Middle School in one district to Proviso High School. That's from one school to a different school in a different district, but your taxes don't go up.
Maybe I'm just not understanding you. You're working, the kids are going to school here, correct? 8 hours a day, and then they're going to go from this school, let's say it's a 7th grader, and he wants to go to 8th grade outside of this area, this school right here, this what you call a school, to the Westchester Middle School.
Okay.
Is that a lateral move? Go from 7th grade to 8th grade, and those teachers aren't going to complain that they're getting, extra kids, and our tax dollars aren't going to go up. I thought you said we weren't paying taxes to go to school here.
Yeah.
We're paying taxes for kids to go to the middle school and provides a lot.
Yeah, I would be glad to try to explain this at length. Your taxes will not go up because students are moving from this program to...
I guess I'm just misunderstanding you. Right?
So let's spend some time and talk together, because I hear what you're saying, but it doesn't impact your taxes for a student to be successful.
This gentleman here keeps asking about the taxes for the school. At some point, we're all paying for this. I'm trying to figure out what kind of, where's it going? What channel is it taking?
Yep, it's all coming out of state money, and it's not coming out of...
When you look at the stats of a school, okay, each district has its public information of what they're paying per child, what the cost is. So I think what he's trying to say is, okay, I don't know what it is in Westchester, I should know. Let's say it's $40 per student or 110, whatever the heck it is. Okay, so if there's 5 kids that transition from West 40 to the Westchester school, is that cost per pupil going to go up within that particular school? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's what I'm trying to say, but he was saying that the lateral around the same.
So who pays that?
But see, now that's not what he said. He said we're not paying here. But this is coming from the state taxes. My real estate taxes are paying for the high school and the middle school. So when a child comes from here, the state taxes, and goes to the middle school over there or the high school, that comes into a real estate tax. Because it's like $30,000 to educate per student in anywhere, not 30, maybe 25, I don't know what the exact number is. So if you get 5 people, kids that come out of here, somebody has to pay on their property taxes for that.
Those mine? So what I'd like to say is, excuse me, I don't want us to derail on this point. I can share with you that school finance is a very complicated thing. This program will not affect your taxes. And I would be more than happy to sit down with any of you and explain how that per pupil works and all of those nuances. It just so happens that 3 people on our staff actually teach graduate level school finance. So we would be glad to spend time explaining. This program is funded through state funds that are grant and contract they're not property tax. They don't impact your taxes. So if you don't believe that or would like more explanation, we would love to sit down with you. Heidi, my communications person, I have a whole stack of business cards right here that have my cell phone number on them. I'd love to sit down and talk more if you have concerns. I truly, truly believe this is going to be an amazing thing for kids, an amazing thing for Westchester. I thank you for coming and sweating this out with me tonight. We are doing another meeting the 23rd of August. That'll be in this site again. And we'll give you the updates. We'll share where we are and answer any additional questions. But feel free to email me or call me anytime. I would be more than happy to address your questions. Okay, thank you.